And welcome into the DFS Pawn Shop. My name is Eric Romoff. You can find me on those Twitter streets at Fantasy Nav, and with me, as always, riding shotgun at the pawn shop and the better half of our outfit here on a Saturday night, Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, how's it going tonight?
You know how it goes, man. Riding high on that little nice $400 victory today in college basketball. So it just gives me more money to mess around with on this NFL slate we're about to talk about.
Shout out, and hey, I know this is a football outfit here on a Saturday night, but if anyone's looking for some free money, hit up my dude Mike over on Twitter, MC Holland 34. He's handing out winners seemingly every night over in those in the CBB slate. So check them out. We're all in here trying to make a little bit of walking around money. So definitely good to pair up with my guy Mike. And as we switch gears back to football, somehow we are in week 12. For those of you that are new to the pawn shop, thanks for checking us out, spending a little time with us. For those of you that are returning, you know exactly what we do here. We spend some time looking at the showcase games, the creme de la creme, the good shit on this week 12 slate. And that's where we're going to spend the majority of our time and our effort. We'll go and spin through the sales rack and we will pick through the bargain bin. And as always, we spend a little bit of time at the end answering any listener questions that come across as we go. And Mike, here in week 12, kind of a shorter slate, right? We've got two teams on bye. We had the big 3-game slate on Thursday on Thanksgiving. So looking at 11 games here, anything in particular that kind of stands out to you in terms of, the overall feel of the slate, or just generally any kind of opening thoughts as we kick this thing off?
Yeah, I think even though we have a shorter slate, it feels like there's going to be a lot more plays to target. There's not really that one game like the Kansas City Dallas game that everybody ran towards. So there's people in my talent or my roster pool this week. So yeah, just looking to kind of find some places where I can be different and really just try to figure out which quarterback receiver stack we're going to talk about. I'm not too excited about some of these value quarterbacks that people are talking about, and Cam Newton, Tyrod Taylor, even a Carson Wentz. I don't think I've rostered any of those guys this year. So those are people we're going to have to consider and talk about. And it's, you know, really going to kind of determine the slate is the spread out with ownership that, yeah, I think it's going to make for a bunch of different lineups this week.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? Like the sort of marquee players that we typically look to build around are all off the board, right? By way of being on the Thursday or the late night slate. So definitely a lot of kind of agency that everyone's going to have in terms of how they ultimately put together in week 12. So with that, we will kick off. We will dive right into our showcase games. Like I talked about, these are the core games that we are going to be spending the majority of our time talking about tonight, and you will ultimately end up spending the majority of your money and your salary cap on here on tomorrow's slate. So with that, we kind of have some new faces here in the showcase. So we'll start off with Tampa Bay and Indianapolis. This is a 1:00 game. We're sitting at a 53-point game total. This one opened at 51.5, so it has come up a little bit. Tampa Bay is currently a 2.5-point favorite, so that leaves them with an implied total of 28 and 1/4, and Indianapolis sitting at 24 and 3/4. So Tom Brady is the highest priced quarterback on the slate. This is the only game that we have up here in the 50s. So, Mike, how much exposure are you going to have to this one as we kick off our builds tomorrow?
Just looking at the pricing in this game, it's a little tough. You get the Jonathan Taylor bump up to 9,100. That's a little tough to pay, especially against this defense. Yeah, Tom Brady being the most expensive at 7,600. I don't know if I'm going to pay up for my quarterback this week. So that's going to be something I kind of tinker around with. And I'm going to have some exposure to him, obviously. And I'm going to try and pair him with a Chris Godwin. Just due to the fact that he's just matchup. So I'm looking to have a little bit of exposure to that. It's just tough to run it back with Taylor. I mean, you're just talking about a super expensive stack, and you're gonna have to get you're gonna have to hit on multiple values at the bottom here, and it's just not really something I'm looking to do. Other than that, I mean, Michael Pittman is definitely interesting at 5,600. You look at the running back room for Tampa Bay, and it's just like everyone's good to go, it seems. So it's just kind of one of those things. Like, do you want to take a chance and get that Fournette ceiling? Just because there's going to be touches out there for Jones and Bernard. Yeah. Other than that, man, it's just even though the total is the highest on the board, it just seems like this is a game that I'm not going to have too much exposure to, but I'm definitely going to at least have a one-off on pretty much every lineup that I'm going to make. So that's just kind of where I'm looking at this game. I'm really looking at other games though. What about you?
Yeah, I've kind of got a similar thought where I wanted to get your point of view a bit more is maybe take another pass at Jonathan Taylor, right? He's priced all the way up. Of late, it looks like people have been able to at least get a little bit more done on the ground against this Tampa Bay Bucs defense. It does look like they are going to have Vita Vea back tomorrow, so obviously that has a lot to do with their ability to stop the run. But I mean, is it sort of an open and shut case where he's north of 9K and you simply can't get there from a salary standpoint, or are you going to try to find some ways to fit him into your builds?
No, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to have him rostered on even one lineup. It's 9,100. I mean, the 30 piece doesn't really destroy me. So I'm not too afraid, if he goes off for, 140 yards and a couple of touchdowns here, it's not going to break me. So, yeah, it's just not really for me. I mean, are you going to have some shares?
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth on it, right? Rewinding to last week, we were kind enough to offer up the Josh Allen, Diggs, Jonathan Taylor stack that I ultimately tinkered off of. So I'd probably have a little bit of PTSD from not having as much Taylor as I should have last week. But also, we don't chase here on the pawn shop. So I'll have a couple of spots where I'll get him in, but I'll probably be underweight to the field, and I don't think he's going to carry all that much ownership as it is, right?
Not at all.
But with that, we've actually got Scott chiming in. He is letting us know that Jonathan Taylor is matchup proof. I tend to agree, right? The way they use him a little bit as a receiver, just how involved he is in the red zone. I do think that he is a safe play regardless of matchup. I think the point here, and Mike, correct me if you think differently, I think the point here is more about price tag than it is about matchup.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm paying 9,100, man, I better make sure he gets to 30. And those are just really guys like Christian McCaffrey, and man, it's just tough to pay that price. I don't know. I never really pay for anyone above 9K at running back unless it's Christian McCaffrey. So I have a really hard time clicking anyone else's name, especially against this defense that's getting Vea back.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Scott also wants to know, I don't know if this is for this game in particular, but he wants to know if we've got any deep sleepers at the wide receiver position. So we talked about Pittman being a little underpriced. Looks like T.Y. Hilton is going to be fired up and available for tomorrow. Granted, this is not a game against the Texans, so proceed with caution. Mike, any receiving options on this game that you think are worthy of deep sleeper status?
Yeah, I mean, T.Y. Hilton 4K. It's like, come on, man. And can you just do anything? Can you pretend they're the Texans? It just seems underpriced, 5,600. These other guys are just they're better options in other games that we'll talk about.
Awesome. Scott, hang in there with us. We will get to a few of these names as we go on through the night. I do have one more question for you about this game in particular, but before I do, looks like Jeff is checking in, building his lineups with us on a Saturday night. Jeff, what up? thank you for having us on earlier in the week and for tinkering with us late on a Saturday. So we'll keep plugging away through. The question that I had for you, Mike, is specifically about the Tampa Bay running back room, right? It seemed like for a good 4 or 5 weeks there, Fournette was one of the safer plays and just sort of routinely underpriced. All of a sudden, we saw Gio get a little bit more involved last week. We obviously saw Ronald Jones kind of come back from the dead in their last game out. Is that enough involvement from them to kind of create some concern for Fournette, or do you think you'll still have some Lenny in a couple of spots?
I mean, if you're playing 150 lineups, maybe one Lenny, but yeah, I'm just not want to touch. So
1 out of 150. You heard it here first. So literally the minimum amount of Leonard Fournette exposure. And I'm right there with you, right? The argument for him up until this point was just how steady that volume was. And if that falls off even a little bit, it changes the picture for Leonard entirely. So won't have very much of him, maybe as a last guy in, as you're, kind of rounding out that lineup. But even with that, not really getting much of a ceiling there, given that he has two other guys.
He's going to be on the Millionaire Maker lineup now.
Now that we've said it, yeah. And hopefully
1 out of 150.
It'll be a pawn shop listener who literally threw one dart at Lenny out of 150.
Only listens to us because we know the Millionaire play, not that you're not supposed to play.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll wait for screenshots and maybe for a little tip when someone hits us up that they decided to fade all of our advice, and that's the one that got through.
Absolutely. Anything else from this one?
Right on. We will keep it moving here in the showcase. Our next game up is the Minnesota Vikings facing off against the San Francisco 49ers. We're moving to the afternoon block. This is a 4:25 game. We're sitting at a 49-point total, and this one's actually come up a pretty good bit. It started or opened at 46.5. San Francisco is right now a 3-point favorite. They opened at 6.5 points, so it seems like the market kind of started giving Minnesota a bit more credit, which has been a long road for them. That leaves San Francisco with an even 26-point implied total and Minnesota at 23 points. So, Mike, this is the second highest total on the board. Minnesota, every single week, seems like they're plus or minus like 2 points against every player or every team that they face off against. So, should very much so be a close one. The weapons that are on this team are relatively straightforward in terms of who you're looking to stack with. So, this game on the whole, we're sort of minimizing our exposure to the Tampa Bay game we just talked about. Is this where your money is going to be spent primarily tomorrow?
Not quite. I do like some pieces in this game. The thing about this game is these guys are pretty priced up. I mean, you look at Deebo Samuel, 7,900. And that's pretty so yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have some exposure to some of these guys. Obviously, Dalvin Cook, 8,100 here. I was gonna make a few of my lineups. As far as stacking, I'm probably gonna get a little crazy in like a winner take all type scenario with like a Cousins or a Garoppolo here. As far as stacking options, I mean, Thielen, it's just, man, he just doesn't seem like he's that game breaker. I mean, he'll catch the 2-yard out route. If I'm paying for anybody in this game, Justin Jefferson at 8,300, that price tag it kind of hurts, but he can get it going, and we've seen his ceiling. So definitely want to get some Cousins Jefferson exposure here. Garoppolo 5,700. I mean, whatever. Kittle's all right here, 6,400. No one's probably going to play him, and then someone that's interesting is Brandon Ayuk. I think he's going to be somewhat popular here at 5,300. So definitely want to get some good Lord. Jeff Wilson completely burned me last week. And now we're back to the Elijah Mitchell deal. So, the San Francisco side may just be a little bit of a stay away from me just because I know they like to run the football, but this Mitchell and Wilson deal, it's just annoying. So if I'm playing any running back, it's probably going to be paying up for Dalvin Cook. So that's just kind of where I'm at on this game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and that you actually sort of touched all the points that I wanted to get to, drilling in a little bit closer. So I'll start with your last one. We talked about it a little bit last week in Minnesota's matchup against Green Bay, but it feels like Dalvin Cook is just perpetually getting overlooked, right? You think about where he slots in there in the pricing. He's the fifth most expensive player, and he's right at the end of that kind of 8K range, right? So as people are down there about to spend $8,100, Joe Mixon at $7,500 is sitting there, right? Cordell Patterson, who might play, Saquon Barkley, James Robinson, people that have pretty solid workloads, are sitting there with, pretty considerable savings. So I guess, sort of finger in the air, if you are playing Dalvin Cook, where do you think his ownership might actually land for tomorrow?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be. It's not going to be very popular, but I mean, 8,100. Yeah, I mean, he gets a lot of work though. I mean, it's did punch one in, scored 22 and a half fantasy points on DraftKings. Yeah, I just don't know, man. Like some of these games this week just seem like they're not smash spots. I think the next couple we're going to talk about here, the games I'm really going to attack. I will have some Dalvin Cook. I will have some Justin Jefferson. Samuel will make my lineups. I just don't know about game stacking this game. I don't know. It just seems kind of like the last game we talked about, where I'm just going to have a couple of pieces.
Yeah, Scott's sticking with us. I guess he wants to get our thoughts on maybe a mini stack on this one. Kirk Cousins running it back with Thielen, so you're going to get some salary relief. You're going to get some differentiation in your lineup, and then Debo on the run back. Is that something that you think can maybe get through, or do you think there are some different ways to either think about this game or this slate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I'm probably not going to go that route, but I could definitely see it with the Jefferson and running it back with Mitchell on the other side. So yeah, definitely some ways you can get creative, but I just don't know if I'm going to build a ton of lineups around these first two games that we're talking about. I'm kind of got my eyes targeted on a couple of other games that we'll talk about here.
Yeah, there are a couple of things of note in this game, and they both have to do with the San Francisco ground game, right? I also got burned by Jeff Wilson last week. And the San Francisco coaching staff is so confident in Jeff Wilson that they essentially made Debo Samuel's running back, right? So for me, that basically tips that if Eli Mitchell plays, which it seems like he's trending that way, obviously this is a late game, so have some pivots ready. But if he plays, we can largely expect him to step right back into that workhorse role, and all the way down at $5,400, 5.5K roughly. I really like him as a pay down option to get some salary relief for the more expensive players that we have out there. On the other side, if he doesn't play, I actually like Brandon Ayuk a lot more, right? We saw last week that Debo is going to get some run out of the backfield as a running back, and that really sort of slots Ayuk into that primary receiver role in the San Francisco offense. So those are two things that I'm going to be sort of have on the ready to either fire up Eli if he's available or pivot over to Ayuk, who I don't think is going to get the ownership that he deserves if we do in fact find that Eli's out.
What are your thoughts on Kittle this week?
Yeah,
no one's gonna roster him.
See, I can't get a good read on Kittle, right? Like, generally speaking, I feel like people want either the safe option at tight end, and so they look at the pay up players there, or they want to punt entirely. And so, with that, I mean, Kittle's probably going to be, I don't know, 10 or 12% owned. In terms of his price tag, 6,700. is a lot of money for a guy that's not getting all that much volume, right? Like for a tight end, he's well involved, but he's not getting, the kind of 8, 9, 10 target range consistently that we would look for a player that I'm going to drop 7K on,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like 10 targets in week 4, then he gets hurt. He come back week 9, he gets 8 targets, and he gets 7 targets, then 4 targets. But he scored, a touchdown each game he's been back. So I mean, if we can just get the targets up, I think he's super interesting. Because we've seen that he has the time, and trust me, I'm the first person. I roster defense first, and and then I roster my punt tight end usually next, and then go to my quarterback receiver stack. But I don't know. It just seems interesting. It's like, man, if we could get the volume for him, it's like, man, he's scoring touchdowns. So, yeah, I don't know. Just someone interesting to keep on the board here.
Yeah, I definitely think he's an interesting way to get different. But for me, like I'm not seeing a ton of awesome value on the slate. And like what you just described is like kind of the state of the tight end position, right? Like if he scores a touchdown, he'll get you there. You can say that for every player up and down the tight end board. And I mean, if this is the week where that volume comes back and he gets in the end zone, I mean, he's going to have you rocketing up the payout list.
Right.
So certainly something to tinker with and try to do a bit of research around if you think this is the week where that volume comes back to that kind of double-digit target range.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just interesting. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to go crazy on him, but I just think that, man, I don't know. He just looks interesting in this matchup. So we'll kind of see what happens.
Yeah. So you hinted to a couple of games that we're going to get to here in a moment. The next one that we have up is the Los Angeles Chargers and the Denver Broncos. Stay in the late window. This is a 4:05 game. This is another one that has come up a bit. We're at 47-point total right now. It opened at 45.5. The Chargers are a 2.5-point favorite after opening as a 2.5-point dog. So a lot of that movement has been working in the Chargers' favor. That leaves them with a 24.75 implied total, and the Broncos down at 22.25. So like we talked about, staying in the late window, a lot of movement in the line on this one. So I typically view that, especially when it's going up, as an indicator of where people's attention has been drawn and potentially an indicator for some ownership. So was this one of the games that you were alluding to where you're going to be getting a bit more exposure in your builds tomorrow?
Yeah, this is where I'm getting a lot of my exposure to. My stack attacks are going to happen in this particular matchup here. There are nobody's really priced up. Like you looked at the first couple of games, and it's like you got multiple guys, AK. It just seems like this is a matchup that's maybe a little underpriced, and yeah, definitely looking to get some exposure to different stacking options here. Obviously, you got to have an Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams stack. I mean, it seems like if you don't have that, then I'm not sure what you've been doing because they just have a ridiculous chemistry together. So, we'll see what happens. Dylan isn't going to be quite as popular. So, it'll just be something to monitor here. Darrell Henderson, though, 5,800. I mean, he's too cheap. So definitely looking to get some exposure to him as well. And then my guy, obviously, Van Jefferson, 4,900. I don't mind him at all. I've been playing him. I've hit him a few times. And then, going back up to the top, I mean, Cooper Kupp, he's 9,600. Like, are people going to play Cooper Kupp at 9,600?
Probably, right? Like he's gotten there every single week, and it feels like guess McCaffrey is probably the most recent example where every single week the sites are going to continue to price him up until people stop rostering him, right? And I mean, you do the math and like he's getting there. So I think he'll still get decent ownership, but this is probably right around the point where we'll see it start to tail off a bit. Um, just kind of throwing the red flag out there. I actually made this mistake when I was writing up the show sheet. I teed us off with the Charger game. Mike, you started giving us some analysis on the Rams game. They're both in the late window. They both carry 47-point totals. They both actually carry the same implied totals. So very similar games. Looking on this Ram Green Bay game, first thing I wanted to talk about is you mentioned some Rodgers Adams stacks. Obviously, this is a week where on the other side of the field, running opposite from Devontae Adams is Jalen Ramsey. Any concern about firing up Adams in a week where he is going against the Rams and that defensive secondary led by Jalen Ramsey?
No, I mean, we always talk about matchup proof, so I feel like Devontae Adams definitely fits that description. So no, I'm not terrified to go there. If anything, but no, it doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah, I'm actually right there with you, and oddly enough, Jalen Ramsey isn't really shadowing as much as he used to. He used to be the one that just kind of paired off with the opposing team's best receiver and followed him all over the field. Now he's kind of staying put, right? I think there's only been a couple of games where he's followed anyone from sideline to sideline. So I'm actually looking at it through the exact same lens, right? Like I think that Adams is a super strong play, and I think that he's gonna have his ownership dragged way down um, by this perceived matchup that he's actually not going to end up playing against. So definitely like getting some Adams here. The other side that I wanted to talk about is on the Green Bay side, or sticking with the Green Bay side, and that's AJ Dillon. He was the mega chalk last week, and he did all right, but he certainly kind of underperformed relative to everyone's expectation of him. So I think that kind of drives down his ownership in week 12. And if that's the case, I like getting to a lot of Dillon. Are you with me, or do you think that you're going to be kind of right around the field, or maybe a little bit underweight?
Yeah, I think I'll be right around the field. I'm not going to go crazy with AJ Dillon. I think that's where I'll get most of my exposure to. I've always been someone that pushes the quarterback, running back, receiver stacks, just to kind of be different. AJ Dillon, I don't know, man. I know he was involved in the passing game last week, 6 targets, but he's just not someone that is going to really do much in the passing game. So it's kind of tough to, I want to get a lot of X on the other side, get Henderson in. So I'm going to be building a lot of stacks that way. So my exposure is not going to be too crazy to Dillon, but I'm definitely going to have some.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So any other kind of dart throws? Any thoughts on OBJ and whether or not McVay schemes him into this offense?
Well, I'm just going to miss OBJ like I missed on Valdez-Scantling for the first steps, and I just completely whiffed and didn't play him, and of course he goes bonkers. And I think one of the stacks I saw up at the top was Rodgers, Adams, and MVS, and I'm like, I've been playing that, just waiting for MVS to do anything on his side. So, yeah, I mean OBJ, it kind of is what it is. I kind of just wait and see approach here. MVS is obviously a dart throw. I doubt he does it again. Higbee 4,200 is interesting. Yeah, I don't mind it at all. he's a little obviously, like with most of these guys down here at this price point. I mean, he's going to be touchdown dependent. I mean, if we can get him that another 8 to 10 targets, then man, yeah, he's pretty nice at this price point.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You mentioned Higbee. It's hilarious to me because I think he's pretty well inside of the top 10 in the league in terms of red zone targets, but he just doesn't catch any of those balls or convert them into touchdowns. So he's certainly getting the opportunity. And like, if his price point keeps falling, it could even be there now. Honestly, it might be worth, throwing a couple of darts because he's routinely part of these high scoring games. It's just whether or not you can depend on him to haul in the ball. So he's getting the most valuable looks out there. Eventually, he will regress back to the mean and start to convert some of them. So interesting one to take a look at. Any other thoughts on the Rams game before we jump back to the other side of LA?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Definitely a game I'm gonna try to get overweight on the field. I guess I'll kind of wait to look at ownership projections in detail. As they as we get a little bit closer. I usually like to look at those early in the morning, just to gauge how far I want to go with this particular game environment.
Makes sense. So before we head to the other side of LA, we got our dude Garrison checking in with a quick yo. He's told us before that he's usually in the lab with a pen and a pad doing some work while we are on as background noise. So anyone that checked us out on the Armchair Show should know that they need to be listening to Mike. And I am simply here for the good looks and decent voice quotient, making sure that we stick up on that side.
I definitely think he learned quickly that I'll just jump right in on him, taking his his position group there. So
right, yeah, it was a fun show.
My bad, bro. Next time, I'll be a little more.
No, we were all having a good time, excited to be there, jumping in, and that Thanksgiving slate didn't disappoint. So definitely a good time with the Armchair dudes. But like I said, we will jump back into, or rather stay in LA again with the Chargers to the Denver Broncos 4:05 game. Another 47 total, another one that's gone up a couple of points. The Chargers did flip as a favorite, or excuse me, as an underdog, and are now a favorite. Leaves them with a 24 3/4 implied total, and leaves Denver at 22 1/4. So heading to the other side of SoFi, technically both of these teams are on the road, but looking at the Chargers and the Broncos, closely contested AFC West. This one looks like it's going to be a relatively close game. Any pieces or potential stacking options that you're looking at here?
Give me my Herbert Williams stacks. Link them together. I mean, what are you looking at? 6,600 and 50. What is Williams is all the way down to 5,700. I mean, yeah, if you put those two together, you can take a value play like a Higbee at tight end, and you can pretty much piece together some of these guys up in the 8, 9K range and get there. So I'm definitely going to have a lot of exposure to that. Don't mind Allen, 7,400. So a little pricey for me. I don't mind it. I'm probably not going to go there on mini lineups, working both the passing game and on the ground there. So I don't mind that as well. I think a lot of my exposure is going to come to the Herbert Williams stack. On the other side, Jerry Jeudy, 5,500. He's a little interesting just for the fact that he's super contrarian. I just feel like at some point we're going to get like a monster Jerry Jeudy game. And I mean, he's got last 2 games, 9 targets, 8 targets. We get a touchdown in one of those. He's getting close to. Don't mind that. Obviously, Sutton, $100 cheap. I don't mind either one of the receivers here. Definitely, they have nice upside here. So, obviously, Bridgewater here, 5,300. I'm not going to ever play Bridgewater, so I'm just going to kind of cross him off, and hopefully, he targets one of these 2 guys 10 times, and we convert a touchdown off of one of those. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to have any Bridgewater. I don't really know how anybody would get to Bridgewater unless they're just math multi-entering, right? I mean, down at that range, even there are a couple of guys that are worth a look over Bridgewater if you're trying to be in the 5K QB range. And take it from me, that's not a fun range to be in. So attention is definitely better spent elsewhere. One of the guys that I wanted to talk about, though, is one of the receivers for Teddy Bridgewater, and that's Cortland Sutton. You mentioned he is a $100 discount relative to Jerry Jeudy. Since Jerry Jeudy has returned, Sutton has hauled in 5 balls for like 75 yards. So his volume really seems to have taken more of the hit that I think people were anticipating would fall onto Tim Patrick when Jerry Jeudy returned. So, it's essentially a pick 'em with them sitting at the same price. Do you think there's reason to be concerned about Sutton's involvement, or do you think that these last few weeks are a bit of the exception?
Yeah, I think there's a little reason to be worried here, but I mean, my man just got 61 mil this week, so he's in good spirits right now. So, if I want to use a narrative here, my guy's happy. We just need to get him the ball. So, I'm gonna have exposure to him. These guys are too cheap, and I feel like one of them has the ability to go off in this scenario. So I'm gonna kind of use these guys as one-off pieces and use them in my run backs with my Herbert Williams stacks.
That makes sense. Yeah, the pricing on Herbert is just silly. Like I don't know why he's down at $6,600. It feels like DraftKings really wants you to play him, and that always just like kind of gives me like a little bit of hesitation. But ultimately, like like you said, to be around 12K ish on your stack when you pair him up with Mike Williams, it just gives you a lot of flexibility. I do want to get your thoughts on Austin Eckler. You mentioned the volume being there, and he's definitely getting touches. But if you look at his last 5 games that he played, he only got north of 11 carries in one of those games, right? 11, 11, 17, 11, and 6. So unless and until the Chargers are behind, I do think there's some kind of touchdown dependency baked into Eckler's productivity. Am I being too cautious about that, or do you think that there's maybe something there?
No, I'm definitely only gonna have a few shares. I mean, you look at it, yeah. I mean, he's obviously gets it done both ways. We saw he just went off for 41.5 fantasy points. So people are gonna look at that kind of looked at Taylor and they're gonna say, kind of the game log watchers. But I mean, if you look at it, we're at a season high price, 8,400. That's a lot to pay. Got to get at least a one score. He's not pay this off. So, just knowing that and how much I like the passing game in this one, I'm only gonna have a few shares, so I'm not gonna go crazy, and I'll just let other people pay 8,400 for Eckler.
Yeah, it's kind of weird up top at the running back position, right? You've got Taylor and McCaffrey at 9K essentially. Pretty good step down to Eckler at 8,400. And then you start to get into that Najee Harris, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon range. So it's hard to get a gauge on sort of where the ownership's going to fall in that top tier. But sticking at the running back position, maybe it's a bit of narrative. I'm not really sure how to categorize it. But
Here
Vic
we go.
Fangio, our guy Fangs, he's like the most old school of head coaches out there. And traditionally, the way that head coaches treated their rookie skill position players was that coming out of the bye is when they really got that bump in workload. So do you think this is the point where we see that script flip and we see Javonte Williams get 60, 65+% of the touches out of that Broncos backfield?
Yeah, I mean, haven't we gotten to the point of the season where they realize that Javonte Williams is better? Like, I don't I don't quite understand what's going on
I
here.
mean, realistically, that should have been week 1 if Melvin Gordon didn't break that like 78-yarder or something. Every Javonte Williams owner out there was just flipping their laptop when they saw him break that long one in week 1. Like, no, he's gonna hang around.
So true, man. I don't know, man. Like I wish this kid would get, man, if we could just get this kid at, just give me 18 to 20 touches, like I would roster him immediately. I just, it is what it is. The running back side on Denver is more of a stay away option.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Really the running back options.
Yeah. Anyone else here in the Chargers and the Broncos game that might be worth talking about or looking at as maybe a leverage or a pivot play?
Noah Fant, 4,600. I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, I'll have a few just to just so that way when I look at my how did I get to so many Suttons and Judys and and Noah Fant was the one that's about it though.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Fan is decently involved, right? I think the issue is that this offense on the whole just doesn't get a ton of plays week in and week out. So it's gonna feel kind of gross to click the button on any of them. But ultimately he's sort of a notch above that 3 for 33 tight end range. And if you're looking for run backs, he's arguably going to be the lowest owned of the Denver receiving option. So definitely like Fant there.
Yep.
So that concludes our look at the showcase. Again, these 4 games are where we will spend the majority of our salary tomorrow. Looking at our next stop in the pawn shop is the sale rack. Might be the best part of any visit to the pawn shop, right? Seeing what's on sale. Certainly not going to be the high ticket items that they have in that display case, in that showcase. But if you take a closer look, usually you can walk away with something that you're pretty happy with. And the first game that we have here on the sale rack is the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. We now head back to the early block with a 1 o'clock game. Another 47-point game total. This one moved a little bit. It opened up at 46.5, so it's gone up by half a point. Baltimore is currently a 3.5-point favorite, which is right where they opened, so pretty steady overall. Leaves them with a 25 1/4 implied total, and Cleveland down at 21 3/4. And the storyline for this game, at least for me, is that we're getting some significant pieces back for this Browns offense, right? Baker Mayfield has every part of his body injured, but now he will have Jack Conklin returning to the offensive line and Kareem Hunt returning to the running back room from injured reserve. So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving pieces in this Browns offense. Any thoughts in particular in terms of where you want to go for this game?
This game, the Cleveland game, I don't know if this is on the main slate, is it? Am I tripping here?
You might not be.
It's a showdown.
Oh, yeah, this is the showdown slate. Look at us at 8:20. This is where the math got off. Well, if that's the case, if you're playing showdown cash, going with the 2 quarterback, 2 kicker lineup in your flex spots is a really safe floor of scoring. So definitely a good way to look at kind of minimizing the risk in your cash lineup. Definitely have been able to hit a good number of double ups in showdown. But we will stick with the main slate and we'll head over to Atlanta firing it up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a 1 o'clock game that is carrying a 56-point total. This one has come down a ton. This one opened almost at 51 points. Atlanta is a 2-point favorite after opening as a 1-point dog. So that leaves them with an even 24-point implied total. Jacksonville all the way down at 22. It's actually one of their higher implied totals on the year. So both of these teams are in various states of disarray. Any players that you think are worthy of a look here?
Yeah. It's funny, the first guy, most expensive guy in this game is your boy Cordero Patterson.
My dude,
I just
who's
think
that?
that's pretty funny. James Robinson, definitely going to get some exposure here. $6,200. The Atlanta run defense isn't a lot of my lineups here. I rode the Matt Ryan train for even in season long, and it has not worked out at all for me this year. So if you go back and look at the tape, it's like you probably burned a lot of money if you if you followed me trying to stack the the Falcons here with Matt Ryan. He's pretty terrible. So I know he's under pressure. I think I saw a stat where he's like on 33% of his dropbacks. He's under pressure. So it's a terrible offensive line. Gauge is now 5,100. I mean, like should tell you everything you need to know about the Atlanta side here. So mostly I'm just looking at the Jacksonville side here. I do like Trevor Lawrence, 5,400. I don't mind Chenault at 4,400 or Marvin Jones at 5,300. It seems all in all that Jacksonville is pretty affordable, and I don't mind taking a stab here. So I think I'm going to get some exposure to him and some of the larger field tournaments I'm going to play. I know Kyle Pitts, the volume, and we've seen the upside is there. I just don't trust Matt Ryan to be able to get him the ball. So it's just kind of tough to roster a lot of these guys. And the running game, it's like almost non-existent, it feels like, for Atlanta. So, most of this, as far as how I'm going to attack, it's going to come on the Jacksonville side. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, James Robinson is like borderline cash game lock status for me, right? Like you look at him down at $6,000 and he's going to see the consistent volume that he gets week in and week out. And this is arguably not only the best matchup, but the best game script that he's probably going to have all year. So if you want to get weird elsewhere in your lineup and you're looking for kind of that safe and steady points per dollar option, I think there's a good argument to be made for James Robinson. In terms of Matt Ryan, I think he might actually be one of the more popular pay down options, right? People just
don't do it.
Generally look for the players that are squaring up against Jacksonville, and that's who they're going to go with, right? So we talk about Kupp getting priced up. We talk about JT getting priced up. Jefferson's getting priced up, right? Like there's a lot of pay up options on this slate. So
who do you stack them with?
Nobody. Naked Matt Ryan. Worst idea in the history of mankind. Pitts, maybe. I am not endorsing the idea of playing a bunch of Matt Ryan. I just think down at $5,500, he might get close to like 7 or 8% ownership, which for a quarterback is kind of a lot, right? Like quarterbacks don't really see more than like 12 to 15% ownership, and even that's like mega chalky. So something to keep in mind. If you think that you're getting cute with Matt Ryan, you're not, and you're probably going to have a bad time. Is really the best way that I could have framed that up. On the Jacksonville side, I also really like Laviska Shenault, but I also look to the times in the season where their starters were unavailable, and we saw guys like Tavon Austin get fired up, right? So everything seems to be lining up to where Shenault should have a ton more opportunity now that Agnew is on IR. And that just seems like the type of place where Urban Meyer loves to throw a wrench at us and do some wild shit.
This game's going to be 9-3. Like And now that I said that, I'm gonna the first lineup I build in the morning is going to be a Matt Ryan stack with Gage, just so just so I don't have to look back at this tape and see how much I dogged my boy that I keep crashing and burning with on a week to week basis.
Running back with CPAT. You're the king of the quarterback running back stack to get different. This is your chance.
Oh God.
Be the change you want to see in the world, Michael.
Well,
be the change.
But hey, but I'm just like, I'm looking at Jacksonville's defense and I'm like 2,200, like that's like the defense that I want to roster a lot. I mean, right?
I mean, why not, right? Like you fired off those stats about how quickly people are getting to Matt Ryan behind this Swiss cheese O line. Like sacks lead to turnovers and turnovers lead to touchdowns. You're gonna have arguably as good a shot at a defensive touchdown with Jacksonville as you will with maybe any team not named the Patriots this week, and they're free. They're 2K. So great spot to pay down and still get that turnover upside that we're all chasing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we can carry on. We will stick on the main state with the Philadelphia Eagles heading to the Meadowlands to face off against the Giants. We are at 1 o'clock. This is a 45-point game total. Opened up there and has stayed there since. This is another one that flipped. For some reason, Philadelphia was a 3-point underdog when this one opened. Now they're sitting at a 3.5-point favorite. So that leaves them with a 24.5 implied total, and with the Giants sitting at a 21-point implied total. So to much fanfare, we saw the firing of Jason Garrett and all of his hand claps. Does that give you any reason for optimism around this New York Giants offense, or do you think it's going to be more of the same?
No, man, they're just not good. If anything, I'm like looking at the Eagles defense, 3,200 looks appealing. Yeah, the game. I mean, I'm just looking at the Philadelphia side. It's like, man, I got to start rostering him more. It just, finally gets a little bit of a price bump up to 7,300. It's been a few weeks since he's been at that price point. So, I mean, the guy's just putting up. I mean, it's just like, hey, just go ahead and mark your 23 points and move on. I mean, at this point, cash game lock, and I mean, if you want to be safe in like small tournaments, he's pretty much your guy. So. You can play him naked. You can stack him with Devonta Smith, but I really want to spend 6,400 and pay 13 grand for that stack to only to watch Jalen Hurts run the ball in 2 times. I mean, so it's just a tough spot. Not my favorite game, but yeah, I mean, a few pieces, mostly being Hurts, and then Goddard. I mean, 4,800. A little interesting, but like I said, it just hurts. It just takes away the value from the receivers and tight ends on his own team. So most people, don't really like to stack the receiver and tight ends with him. So I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, for me, and this is where I wanted to get your thoughts. I sort of hate saying this. Miles Sanders feels like a really safe play at $5,100. Dude's gonna be the death of me.
Is this week 4 again, or like we're
for whatever reason, right? Like this Nick Sirianni coaching group came in and immediately wanted to do like the high tempo, high velocity passing game thing. They never ran the ball. Miles Sanders was getting no touches, and he got hurt, and they gave like 35 carries a week to a bunch of scrubs off the practice squad, right? Now those scrubs are out of the way, and Miles Sanders got 16 carries last week, right? Jordan Howard is on IR. It looks like this is largely going to be Sanders' backfield to bear the workload that they've now adopted, right? They've become kind of this ground and pound team over the last 5 or 6 weeks. So looking at him at 5K, like I think there's a lot to like there. He's going to be popular, right? He's going to be like a 13-15% owned guy.
That's why I don't like him, because he's going to be popular, and I'm going to be one of those people that looks at, well, the volume and everything that you're talking about, and all of a sudden this coaching staff goes right back to just putting pitch. Just I mean, I get it, 5,100. I completely get it. I'm not going to be, I'm not saying I'm completely fading him, but I don't want to be with the field on this.
I mean, it feels terrifying, right? Like the entire existence of Miles Sanders has been one where they basically just abuse this kid, right? Even last week, like he only got this workload mid-game as Howard went out, right? Like it's not like they came out and gave him this ridiculous workload from the jump. So, I mean, there's some risk there. Again, I think he's an interesting play in cash, and I just kind of wonder as we get to the morning and how ownership shakes out. I mean, for me, like if he falls below that like 10% range, I'm probably going to be overweight to the field. I think 15 is about right, and a lot of it has to do with salary relief, right? Like the studs that we want are super expensive. There aren't these like 1 or 2 super clear games that we want to attack from a stacking standpoint. So I think I want that, $1,500 or so back into my coffers so I can go out and get to the guys I want to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not mad at that at all. You like anything from the Giants passing side? I mean, we talk about cheap tight ends all the time, and Evan Ingram, he's not good at football anymore, but if he can just catch one touchdown, he's going to pay off that $3,800 price tag.
I mean, the state of tight end, right? You catch one touchdown and you're having a good day. I do think it's kind of interesting to look at one of the Giants receivers. I think it really boils down to where Darius Slay's coverage is likely to go. But you look at Slayton, you look at Galladay, right? Like
they're cheap.
We don't have Sterling Shepard. We don't have Kadarius Toney. Both of those guys are cheap. They're right at or sub 5K. So again, another spot where you can potentially get some salary relief. And literally the only thing that people can agree on in this world is that it's funny to laugh at this Giants team. So both of those guys are going to be 2% owned, maybe, right?
Yeah.
So definitely an interesting way to get different to the field.
Yeah, for sure.
Which of those two do you think we should be firing up? Do you think it boils down to the Slay matchup?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like I don't know, because I'm looking at it, and I just went off on this tangent about how you really shouldn't play these receivers with with our guy Jalen Hurts, but then we're looking at it here, and it's like Jalen Reagor, guys on the field, they just don't throw him the ball, and he's 3K. Like instead of playing one of these receivers from the Giants, it's like can we just get like forward and maybe a reverse, like just get him going? Can we do anything with this kid? I mean, the kid was really good at TCU, like he flashes, but it's just like, man, what is going on here? We just don't seem to. It just seems like they don't know how to get the ball to their best players. I don't know. So I don't know who's getting the football for these guys, but
So I think that really kind of highlights the change of philosophy in this Sirianni offense, right? You look at Jalen Hurts box scores, and that's the answer to why Reagor can't get going. Like he's on the field all the time for them, but over the last 4 weeks, Hurts has had 24 attempts, 23 attempts, 17 attempts, 14 attempts, right? Like they are running the ball into the ground. So you're playing 90% of snaps, but your quarterback only throws it 14 times. Like you're going to have a lot of like 1 for 18 kind of days,
Right. And then Hurts has got 18 rushing attempts, 13 rushing attempts, 10 rushing attempts. He's getting double-digit rushing attempts. So it's like, I'm just like, okay, I'll just play Hurts and cash in like small tournaments.
Man, I kind of want to look at like a 3-max with a Hurt Sanders stack.
Oh man, just put it in the middle,
Literally
dude.
the only person in a 5,000 person field that will fire that up.
Absolutely. Let's move on. We spent way too much on this game.
And speaking of spending way too much, let's tighten those purse strings and head on down to the bargain bin. Always got to stop by. You got to see what's in there. Usually it's junk. You got to rifle through and see if there are any diamonds in the rough. These are the lowest game totals on the slate, but there's usually something to be said for maybe a piece or two making their way into the build. And we will start in the 1 o'clock slate with the New York Giants heading to Houston to face off against the Texans. We're sitting at a 45-point game total. This has come down a point after opening at 46. Right now, as we live and breathe, the Houston Texans are 2.5-point favorites. They opened as a 1-point dog, so the line has moved in their favor. This leaves them with their highest implied total on the year. Almost 24 points, 23 3/4. The Jets down at 21 1/4. Mike, how much Tyrod Taylor are you going to have tomorrow?
Guys, I don't think I've rostered any of here. So 5,300, yeah, Tyrod Taylor. Yeah, I guess. I mean, you look at it, you look at the pairing with Cooks, and it's pretty cheap. You can pay up for some of these running backs and receivers that we want to get. Cup, Adams, McCaffrey. So yeah, I mean, I'm not excited about it, but it's definitely gonna have to get used to clicking some Texans names this week. So back just to and talk about saving some salary. It's like, man, are we really paying Ty Johnson this week? Like, this is where we're at in the season, huh?
I mean, yeah, I think we are playing Ty Johnson. It's $4,300. The thing that is terrifying for me is that Ty Johnson got 2 touches last week. He got a carry and he got a reception. But yet everyone is firing this dude up like he is the next coming. I think Ty Johnson is going to finish with like almost 9 or 10% ownership, which is just bizarre, right? Like, I'll have some shares out there. I won't feel great about it. But the argument or the case to be made for Ty Johnson is that he steps in as the primary pass catching option out of that backfield. And I just don't think the Jets are going to be down enough to where they go into heavy like third down mode and hurry up mode. So I feel like Ty Johnson, even though he's not crazy high owned, is like the picture of bad chalk.
Yeah, I mean, this is where we're at, right? We got super expensive receivers and running backs that we want to play. And then this game comes at us and offers us Ty Johnson, Tevin Coleman, and your boy Rex Burkhead. And putting like a Jalen Rager in there can give you, and playing the Jaguars defense will give you access to anybody and everybody that you want. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not happy about it at all. So, just is what it is, I guess.
So I think a player that there's something to be excited about is our guy Elijah Moore, right? I guess it hasn't been officially announced, but Corey Davis has been tagged as doubtful for tomorrow. Elijah Moore had already sort of emerged and surpassed him in terms of involvement on the field at this point. But looking at Elijah Moore at $5,600, he's coming off of an 8-reception, 141-yard game. He's going to be popular. Do you think that this momentum continues and that he's worth a shot, or do you think that his popularity should take him off the board?
Oh man, this game's gonna end. Yeah, I mean, I have
It's a
some. I'm
bad
just not
time.
I'm just not excited about clicking anybody in this anybody's name in this game. I mean, yeah, you can't argue with the production though. Recently, I mean, the guy is just doing his thing whenever they can get him the ball. I mean, he's one of the steals of the draft. I wish he'd gone to another team. So yeah, I mean, I'll have a few here or there, but if you don't hit bingo on one of these guys, and because I don't think all these guys get there, so yeah, an interesting game, but man, it's just kind of tough. But I don't mind firing up Taylor with Cooks for sure.
Yeah, I definitely like that side and definitely agree that there are some ugly names that won't feel great having, or rather clicking on as you're building out tomorrow. And we will keep that theme alive as we stay in the 1 o'clock window and we look at the Tennessee Titans heading to Foxborough to play the New England Patriots. This one opened at a 48-point total and has now plummeted down to 44 points. It's actually one of our biggest movers on the slate. We started with the Patriots as 1.5-point favorites. It's now crept all the way up to a full 7 points, full touchdown. So a 25.5 implied total. And that leaves the Tennessee Titans as actually one of the lowest implied totals on the board, all the way down at 18.5. So we saw today that A.J. Brown was placed on injured reserve. Obviously, we saw Adrian Peterson sent a pack-in after a short stint in this Titans backfield. So a lot of not so household names are firing up, at least on the Tennessee side of this. Any of those players make for interesting value or maybe an interesting way to see some volume at next to no ownership?
Burrow here is a low implied team total for Tennessee. Seems like Ryan Tannehill's the last man standing. Yeah, I mean, look at the receiving core for the Titans. I mean, it's appealing to throw darts at this, but I just don't know if any of the darts are going to stick on the board. So, um, man, yeah, it's ugly on that side, and I don't really like the other side either. I mean, this is almost a game that's a full fade for me. Um, and I think that's kind of defense, but they're super expensive, 39. I'm not really going to go there. Everyone's so cheap in this game, though. It's just it's you want to click some of these names, but then when you click them, you're like, man, can I figure out some other way to get off of this? So I'm not excited at all about rostering this. I may just cross it off and just pray that something crazy doesn't happen and this game doesn't go over. Because, geez, if this game goes over, it's like there's gonna be one or two pieces in this game that you're gonna wish you had.
So I agree that the Patriots defense is a fantastic play tomorrow. It's going to be hard to get up to 4K, right? Like you can go play Ty Johnson for what you'll spend on Patriots defense. But I do have breaking news right here on the pawn shop.
Oh gosh.
There is one player who is going to go off for the Tennessee Titans tomorrow, and literally nobody will own him. Would you like to guess who this man is?
No, I don't. Give it to me though, because I'm firing him up tomorrow, and so I can blame you.
You are not firing up tomorrow because nobody is firing up tomorrow because he is not on the board, and that is Golden Tate is going to go bananas tomorrow, and he is not available. So that tells you all you need to know about this Titans offense. It's one to watch, right? Like how they use Hilliard and Foreman, what they do with Westbrook and all of the other no-name guys in Tennessee. It will inform plays that we make in the future, but this is not the week to fire them up, right? Bill Belichick has made a career out of making Ryan Tannehill look entirely incompetent. I expect that to be the case again tomorrow, but at least worthy to watch a bit of tape on this one and see if there's anything that we can make for weeks to come. But this is not that week.
No, sir. Let's move on.
Let's move on indeed. The Pittsburgh Steelers are heading to Cincinnati. They're getting some skyline chili at 1 o'clock tomorrow. We're looking at another 44-point total. This one has also come down not quite as much. It opened at 46. The Bengals are 4-point favorites after opening as 3-point dogs. So yet again, another team that has done the old flipperoo in terms of public sentiment and public betting. That leaves them with a 24-point implied total, and the Steelers sitting down at 20 points even. Mike, any players in particular that you think are worthy of a look in this one?
Yeah, there's actually some plays that I don't mind, and some plays that I kind of like in this in this game, and I actually think this game's going to go over. So I mean, kind of teeing it off here. I mean, Najee Harris, 8,200. I mean, 20 fan game. Not a great run defense here, and he does get volume in the passing game. So yeah, he's definitely got a ceiling even at this price point. Man, I cannot believe I'm going to say this, but our guy Noodle Arm and the Deontay Johnson stack is slightly appealing in large field tournaments. Really, Deontay Johnson is a one-off. I mean, I'm going to be using him. I'm not gonna have too many. But I mean, look at it. This guy's getting 13 targets for the last 5 games, and yeah, Noodle Arm just seems to throw it to him, and if we can get that touchdown, I mean, he's gonna hit. So definitely someone I'm looking to get exposure to. There's other pieces. I mean, Chase. I mean, we've seen what the guy's done all year, so he's definitely got slate breaking ability. And at some point, I don't know if it's just going to be week 16 when I finally don't play him, where he's going to go off for six catches for 107 yards and a touchdown, and I'm going to wonder why I didn't have him. So yeah, I mean, I do like some plays in this game, and if it does go over, I do want to be exposed to this game.
This shit right here. This week, week 12, is the week where T. Higgins ultimately gets some shit done and pays off his next to nothing price tag. I was sort of curious if we would see his price tag continue to decrease, right? It's been kind of a week over week thing. And it looks like it's really sort of settled in, right? Like this is the low point that they're going to price him at. So he's going to return value. The reason why I like it is that Watt is going to be all over Joe Burrow tomorrow. And I think that he's not going to have enough time to let those downfield plays to Chase develop as often. So that kind of 8 to 10 yard downfield range that Higgins spends more time running those routes is where he's going to have time to get the ball to. So I think he's going to see a bit more volume and has a really good chance to pay off that $5,400 price tag.
I mean, it's been a little while since we've had a game total this low that there's like 7 or 8 people that I don't mind rostering, and I don't mind stacking this game. Like, I don't know. I just think if we can just get go over by a touchdown here, that we could have some gold here. So I don't know. We'll just kind of see how
Tune
it
in,
probably.
Tune into the pawn shop. Tune into the pawn shop next week, and Mike will be here wearing a couple of gold chains, maybe a nice mink coat, because he went 3x3 on a Steelers-Bengals game with a 44-point total. That's how you cash those checks.
I'm only endorsing it in large field. Come on now, and one-offs and everything else.
That's what I'm saying. Those large fields are the ones where you're gonna clear 6 figures, my guy. When this one hits, you will be the only person going 3x3 on this game. So when it gets there, you're gonna be my new rich friend. We're gonna have a new budget for this pawn shop. We're gonna have all kinds of uplighting, 4K cameras. It's gonna be good days.
Man, I'm gonna put this one in the millie, man, just because I won't be able to live myself if I'm in a 3 max tournament and it hits.
And speaking of the Millie Maker, a game that I think will have at least one player from this game in the Millie Maker winner. Our last stop here in the bargain bin, 1 o'clock game, Carolina Panthers, Miami Dolphins, 42-point total. This one has come down a good bit since opening. We have another flipperoo. The Carolina Panthers were 4.5-point dogs when they opened. They are now 2-point favorites. That leaves them with a 22-point implied total, and Miami sitting down at an even 20 points. Mike, my God, did they quickly buy into the Cam Newton hype train? This guy went out and scored 25 points, 26 points on DraftKings last week and had less than 200 yards passing. Does he do it again? Do you like any pieces from this game?
I mean, I guess, yeah. I don't know if I'm gonna play McCaffrey in tournaments. He's just too expensive. I don't mind him asking 5,600. I mean, it's something to be excited about. Cam Newton, yeah, here we go, 5,600, right? I mean, man, like why? Why does this why is this happening to me? Why has Cam Newton re-entered fantasy relevance? I mean, this is just where we're at, and I don't like it. But yes, I'm gonna have some exposure, unfortunately, and I don't think I'm gonna go crazy. And hopefully, I talk myself off the ledge tomorrow. And I don't know, man. You can get crazy with either one offs or stacking, like a mini stack in this game.
So for me, Cam Newton is cash game gold, right? Like $5,600. What does he need to score? Like 13 points, 14 points to get there in a cash game? Like he can have that in the first quarter. Do you think that there's an argument to be made for naked Cam tomorrow in GPP?
uh Yeah, I mean, I could see it. Like, I love to check the Millie lineups after the slate's over, and you're like, how did this happen? And yeah, like I could see His name being on there late naked. So I don't mind it. I'm not recommending it though.
You will not put that. I'll put your name on that call. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey, super expensive, right? Back up to 9K, just like the good old days. Oddly enough, it looks like he's going to be one of, if not the most popular plays on the board tomorrow. Ownership looks like it's going to settle in between 22 and 25%. I mean, is that just full fade for you, or are you trying to get, closer to that kind of 10% range? Where are you settling in on CMC?
Yeah, probably 5 to 10%. I mean, 9K, like from a guy that we haven't seen a 30 burger. That's what I need. And I just don't know. I mean, Miami's a tough defense. Yeah, I'd rather just play him in cash games, and then on some of these like Ty Johnson and Rex Burkhead stuff that I'm going to roll out tomorrow. I don't mind putting McCaffrey in, but for me, I'm going to play him in smaller tournaments and cash games. I'm not really going to mess with him in the large field. But he's going to be popular.
Makes a lot of sense. I think the only other player to keep in mind is I'm actually looking for an update on Devonta Parker. Looks like they're not going to activate him off of IR. So is this basically just fire up Waddle if you're looking for that high volume floor, sort of sub 6K, or do you think that his popularity is going to make him hard to roster? I think last week he was maybe the second or third most popular wide receiver in GPP. So how does that sort of shake out for your thoughts on Waddle in week 12?
Yeah, I mean, he gets tons of volume. If he scores, then he's going to pay that price point off. So I could see myself going there. But this game environment's just not. It's just not really that appealing to me. I don't know. I'll kind of pass. And if he's going to be a little bit popular, then yeah, I'm definitely going to fade.
Makes sense. Any other thoughts on this game or on this slate as a whole as we get ready to close up shop in week 12?
Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning we're kind of joking around about the 3x3s, but man, this week you just gotta, if we can find the one game that just goes completely bonkers, I think it's probably going to take it down. It's really tough to build lineup fan of mini stacking. There's just a lot of different routes to go, but I think for the main part, there's a lot of quarterbacks that you can play naked, and there's a lot of 3x2 or 3x3 options that are certainly viable because the ownership is going to be spread out a lot this week.
So we're late here in the pawn shop. We got opened a little late. We ran a little long, but for everyone that's hanging on with us here as we get close to the midnight hour in the Eastern time zone, Mike, can you kind of walk us through that strategy a little bit more? Right? Is this one where you find that game to go 3x2 or 3x3, and you rotate pieces around that? Or are you trying to go 3x3 on a number of different games and sort of hedging which one of those is the one that hits?
Yeah, I usually try to target a couple of usually the more popular games, and then I always find looking at Cincinnati and the Pittsburgh game, when the ownership is just this spread out, I'm just rotating my favorite pieces and my favorite one-off plays from the other games in order to fit kind of the narrative that I'm building here. Because in weeks like this, it's like, man, whatever game goes like 42 to 30, 35 is it could be like one of like 8 games this week that I wouldn't be shocked if if we get the score into the 30s and you're like, man, these guys are just going off in this game and they're all sub 10%, and some of those plays with some of your more higher floor plays that they're just going to get the volume. So that's how I look to attack this type of slate versus kind of the ones where we have the Kansas Cities and the Dallases, and you don't want to miss out on the on those high scoring games. But that's how I won the tournament. The small tournament GPP was kind of fading one of those top high totals, and the total in the I think it was I think I had a 3x2 and it just smashed. I mean, so yeah, I'm looking to do that this week, especially because there's going to be so much ownership spread around.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think that's part of the fun, right? Like you have to determine this narrative that you're comfortable with and plant your flag there. So definitely going to be a lot of tinkering as we get close to lineup lock tomorrow morning. And with that, we will close up shop here at the pawn shop. Mike, do you want to send us out and tell the people where they can find you out in the world?
Yeah, you can find me out in the old Twitter streets, as my guy likes to call it, at MC Holland 34, contributing for NBA and college basketball for Dr. Roto. .com, and I'm also a contributor on the Bacon and Egg Show, which centers around Longhorn sports, which glad football season's over. But yeah, just thanks everyone for kind of tuning in. Scott, coming in with a lot of questions and commentary. Appreciate that. Other than that, hope you guys have a good week, and let's find the one game that goes off.
Let's do it. You're absolutely right, Scott, Garrison, Jeff, thanks for spending some time with us, keeping us busy in the chat, and everyone that spent a late evening with us here on a Saturday night. Always appreciate you tuning in. Like I said up at the top, I am Eric Romoff. You can find me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav, contributing here for Going for Two, as well as drroto.com. And with that, we will see you in week 13.